guys, so in the last video we finished adding the ball to the game as well as giving it the proper collision detection and having it move on the screen. What we have to do next is check to see if either of the players scored by making it to where the other player missed the ball and the ball went off the screen. So the way we're going to do that is we can go under these if statements down here and above the key press logic, and what we're going to do is say if ball.x is less than 0, which means player 1 missed, then we are going to increment the score of player 2. So let's pass for now so we can come back to it. Let's go to the very top, and we are going to create two variables. So we'll say player 1 score, so we just say like P1 score is going to be equal to 0, and then P2 score will also be equal to 0. And what we're going to do is go back down to where we just were. So if player 1 misses, we're going to increment player 2's score. So P2 score plus equals 1. And then we'll have another if statement right below that one. We'll say if ball.x is greater than the screen width, that means player 2 missed, so player 1 gets a point. So P1 score plus equals 1. And I think instead of saying for the first if statement, instead of saying 0, we'll say like 0 minus ball.radius, just to really make sure that it's actually off the screen. In case that you want to make the radius bigger, it'll still work. So that's looking good. And there's one more thing I just realized we have to add up in these if statements. So if you remember in the very first video, there's a little glitch that happens whenever you check for collisions. Sometimes what happens is like the ball will kind of get stuck colliding with the paddle, and it'll just kind of like follow the paddle until the player moves faster and like away from the ball. So the way to fix that is, it's like in this first if statement, we're checking to see if it collides with player 1, which is the paddle on the left side. The way we're going to fix it is by giving it a new x position after we change the direction of the x velocity. So the way we're going to do that is we're just going to say ball.x is going to equal player 1.x plus player 1 dot width plus ball dot radius. And what that's going to do is as soon as it collides with it, it'll kind of teleport it just a little bit to where it'll prevent that kind of glitchy effect from happening. And then we can copy this line, paste it down here for the next if statement, and instead of saying player 1.x, we'll say player 2.x. We will get rid of plus the width, and we'll do minus ball.radius. And that'll just kind of keep the game looking smooth. So that all looks good. We just added the increments of the score. What we're also going to do now is after one of the players scores, we're going to call a function called ball.resetPong. And if you remember last video, we made it, but we didn't add any code to it. And this is where we're actually going to call it. So now let's go back up to the ball class right here. So right now we just have pass, but now we're going to add the actual logic. And what we're going to do is kind of reinitialize the ball. Actually, so the first time I made this game, I had kind of logic set to where after one of the players scores, the game pauses for a little bit and then the ball starts moving. Let me just kind of keep this as pass, and instead of calling, so where were we? We were just right here. We said ball.reset. Let me just comment this out, and let me just see what it looks like if we reinitialize the ball. So if we say ball equals a new ball for each of those, let's see what happens. So when we run this and one of the players scores, it automatically just goes again. It's all random, but it's just a little bit too fast to keep up with, I think. So let's miss this one and see how fast we have to reset. I mean, I guess we could keep it like this. If you want to have a pause effect, I can show you how to do it, but if you're fine with it just kind of continuing automatically, then you can just initialize the ball variable to a brand new ball and it'll still be working. So that's kind of fully up to you. I think I'm just going to keep it like this, and I'll go over how to add the logic for ball.reset Pong a little bit later. But I think this is going to be good enough for now. Okay, next what we're going to do is actually add the score on the window of the game so that the users can kind of keep track of who's winning. And the way we're going to do that is by going up to the top. We'll create a variable called font, and that's going to kind of be what it sounds like. It's going to be the font of the text that we're going to display. So we'll say pygame.font.sysfont, and we can pass in any type of font that we like. I'm just going to go with like Comic Sans, and if you want to go with like Arial or like Times New Roman or something like that, by all means do so. And we'll also give it a size in here. I think 50 is going to be good because it's going to be a pretty small. It's just going to be like a number. It's not like a whole word or sentence. So 50 should be good. And then we're going to go under where we draw the ball, the player, and all of that. And what we're going to do is say win, or no, before that actually, we're going to say score 1 text is going to equal font.render. We're going to have to cast the player 1 score as a string. So we'll say str p1 score. And then we're going to pass in a 1 and then the color that we want it to be. So 255, 255, 255. And then we're going to copy this line, paste it right under, say score 2 text, and P2 score. Now that we've got those created, we just have to actually display them on the screen. So to do that, all we have to do is say win.blitz, so score 1 text, and now we're going to actually give it the X and the Y that we want it to be. So player 1's on the left side, so we want score 1 text to be on the left side. And so we'll give it like an X of 10 and a Y of 10. And I think we just have to put this in parentheses. I think that should be good. And then we'll copy this line again, paste it, we'll say score 2 text. We'll keep the Y the same, but we'll move the X to where it'll be the screen width minus the minus 10, and then we'll also say minus the width of score 2 text. So to do that, we're just going to say score 2 text dot get underscore width, and I think that should be good. So now let's run this and see what we've got. So now we've got zeros on the top left. Whenever either one of them scores, it increments, and yeah, and that's all looking good. So if we actually play it around, it all still works. Oops. And the only problem I see right now is if the players are on the scores, you can't read it because they're the same color. So I think we can make the score text be like a light gray, so it'll always be visible. Okay, so let's go in here and change the 255s to 211s. So now when we run this, it's still kind of visible. So we can do like, let's say like 195. Let's kind of see what that looks like. Because I want it to be easily read at any time in the game, like whether the players are on it or they're not. So we can still read that right now, and then if I'm on it, you can still see the number. So I think that looks good. The locations are all pretty decent. Yeah, I mean, it's all solid. And this really kind of wraps it up for the game. I mean, like the game's fully functional. We can play against ourselves. We can grab a friend, play against them. I mean, if the ball goes off the screen, the score increments properly. It's always pretty randomized. There's like no like weird glitchy effect if you kind of hit it too late. Like it always bounces off correctly. And yeah, I think this really kind of wraps it up for the game. I think the only thing I can add that's left to add is that thing I was talking about earlier where there's like a little pause after each new round. So it's kind of up to you if you want to implement that or not. If you're satisfied with where the game is at right now, then congratulations, you just completed it. And if you want to add a little pause, just stick around and I'll show you how to do that. So the way that we're going to do the pause is going to be very similar to kind of reinitializing the ball, but then adding some extra logic to make the whole game freeze for just a little bit. So like lots of the code up here, as far as the X and the Y, we're going to need, we can copy those lines, paste them inside here. We also need these 4 lines for getting the X and the Y velocity because we still want that to be just as random as always. The only additional logic that we're going to need to have is going to be like another while loop. So what this while loop is going to say is it's going to be I is going to be set equal to 0, and then we're going to say while I is less than 100, pygame.time.delay. We're going to pass in 10, which is going to be like 10 milliseconds. And then after that, we're going to just increment I, so plus equals 1. And what we're going to do in this case is we're going to say We're going to create a for loop kind of like down below where we check for the events. So we'll say for events in pygame dot events dot get, and then if the event dot type is equal to pygame dot quit, then I is going to be equal to 301, and pygame is going to be quit. So this looks a little bit odd. Basically what we're doing is we're kind of, so time.delay is kind of like freezing the game, which is like what gives it the pause effect. But in the case that a player wants to exit the game during the time that it's frozen, we just have to go through this for loop just to kind of make sure that whenever they want to escape from it, it'll still work. Another thing you can do is just kind of recenter the paddles at the center, like where they initially started at, instead of just kind of continuing from where they left off. So to do that, all we have to say is player1 dot y will be set equal to the screen height divided by 2 minus player1 dot height divided by 2, and then just make that say player1, and then we'll copy this line and we'll paste it and say player2 dot y and player2 dot h. So now the reset Pong function is complete, if I'm not mistaken. Let's just go down here to where, so instead of creating a new ball, I'm going to comment that out and then uncomment reset Pong, and then do the same thing in the next if statement. Comment out the reinitialization and just call reset Pong. Let's run this and see what happens. So as you can see, what's happening is basically like a player scores and then the game pauses and then a new ball comes, which is not bad, but I feel like it could be better. Okay, so like let me just point something out. So like right now, whenever a player scores, the game pauses, but there's just no indication the ball is here until it starts moving. The way we can change that is by going up to the reset Pong function, and right before the while loop, we're just going to call redraw game window to show that the ball has been moved back to the center. We're going to run this, and now it pauses there and then it moves, right? So let's miss it. Like if I go hit it and then like let's say we play around, whatever, and then I miss it now, the paddles move back to their original places and the ball pauses for about a second. So I think that's looking pretty good. I mean, that really wraps it up for what we needed in this game. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope your code is working. If you have any bugs or any problems that you ran into, or if there's anything that I didn't really explain in enough detail, just comment down below, ask your questions, and I'll definitely try to answer them as soon as possible. I hope you guys learned a lot. And yeah, if you enjoyed, just like the video and subscribe for more content. Peace.